webinars aim to facilitate peer-to-peer exchange among OBA. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us at Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the third webinar, part of the OBA webinar series. My name is Ana Silvia Aguilera. I'm an infrastructure specialist working in GPOBA, and I will be the facilitator for our presentation today. The OBA webinars aim to facilitate peer-to-peer exchange among OBA experts, strategic partners, donors, governments, clients, and practitioners. The series will offer monthly sessions in a variety of topics on which GPOBA works. Particular focus will be given to new sectors and topics such as OBA and sanitation that we are discussing today. Other subjects will be solid waste management, public-private partnerships, fragile and conflict-affected countries, program for results, and more. If you are new to the concept of OBA, you can check the GPOBA website at gpoba.org, where you will find a variety of resources, including an e-learning course on OBA. Some housekeeping issues. Since this is a webinar, only the presenters will be able to talk, but we encourage your participation by typing your questions and comments in the chat box located at the right of your screen, either during the presentation or right after during the Q&A section. The topic we will present today is OBA and sanitation in support of the Greater Accra Metropolitan Area Sanitation and Water Project in Ghana. Our speaker is Ventura Bengochea. He is a lead water and sanitation specialist, currently in charge of projects dealing with water, sanitation, urban drainage, solid waste, and institutional strengthening in Africa. Since joining the World Bank in 1993, he has managed projects in Mexico, Honduras, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, Venezuela, Guyana, Peru, Paraguay, Argentina, Indonesia, Burundi, Ghana, Guinea, Liberia, and Senegal. Prior to joining the bank, he worked for 14 years for a U.S. engineering consulting firm. He holds a Master of Science in Civil Engineering and MBA degrees from the U.S. He led the preparation of an OBA urban sanitation facility with the objective of increasing access to improved sanitation to people living in low-income communities within the Ghana's Greater Accra Metropolitan Area. As GPOBA continues to deepen its expertise in the sanitation sector, Ventura will present the challenges in the provision of improved sanitation access to the Greater Accra Metropolitan Area in Ghana. He will also present how an OBA scheme can enable these services to low-income households and complement the interventions in this sector, addressing wider sanitation and water needs in the Ghana. Thank you, Ventura, for being our presenter today. I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Ana Silvia. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. It's a pleasure to be talking about this project that I think is very representative of not only Ghana but other cities, metropolitan areas in Africa and in other developing countries. Here is an outline of what we'll be talking today. So I will refer to the IDA, what we call the IDA Sanitation and Water Project, and then we'll link to what is the support that will be provided by the OBA with regard with the sanitation aspects of the project. This slide provides you an idea of what is called the Greater Accra Metropolitan Area. This is an area that doesn't exist politically, but exists in reality, and it includes 11 municipalities up to this moment because they keep growing, and it's an area that is growing very rapidly in both extension and in population. About 3.6 million people reside here already in the Greater Accra Metropolitan Area, plus there is a large population that commutes to work daily and use sanitation facilities or none. The latest projections indicate that the population may exceed...
Ventura, can I just It seems that some of the participants are having a problem hearing you well. Can you either get closer to the microphone or turn off the volume?
Can you hear me now? Ana Silvia, can you hear?
I do hear you, but
Is now
not
better?
clearly. It seems that people said not clearly. Can you talk now?
Yes, can you hear me? Hello? Is it now
Yes,
better? Is it better now?
that's better. Clarissa said that's better.
Is it better now?
Yeah, we have two people saying it's better.
Okay. So,
Thank
um, thank you for letting me know. Um, so, nearly 50% of the people living in this area occupy one single room in the so-called compound houses. And these are very poor people, families that crowd in one single room, who struggle to pay the typical 1 or 2 year lease that they are required by the landlords in advance. Now, most poor people, especially those in compound houses, rely on public toilets at the cost per use of about 25 cents of US dollar, or the other alternative is to practice open defecation. We are not talking today about water, but they also have to buy water that is 10 and more times what people with piped services would pay. Now, according to the statistics, 34% of Gamma population rely on public toilets, and only 8% do not use any facilities at all, according to the census 2010. But the last figure seems to be underreported. The provision of toilet facilities to these people living in these crowded compound houses uh, present significant problems, including social, physical, and technical issues. From an institutional and policy viewpoint, there is a significant difference between water and sanitation services. While urban water services are provided by a single national utility, the sanitation services are decentralized and fall under the responsibility of the local governments. Uh, the other big difference is that pipe water systems, where available, are considered public goods, and their costs borne principally by the utility other than the private connection. While in the case of sanitation, only the people, that is about 10% who has access to sewerage, uh, enjoy these public goods, but the sewerage are not working very well. But most of them rely on on-site facilities that have to be financed by their own resources. Um, Sludge from septic tanks is collected by private vacuum trucks generally, and most of it ends discharged and treated into the sea at the end of the day. I would like to emphasize that the government of Ghana is committed to improving sanitation services, but this will require an increase in the demand and supplies of toilet facilities through consultations, extended consultations, and the development of local private sector. It will also require sustainable facilities and services. And this will require definitely hardware, but most important, it will require plenty of software. So let me just give you a brief review of what the IDA project does, just to link to the OBA. The development objectives of the project are quite simple: to increase access to improve sanitation and improve water in the Greater Accra. And you may be able to see in the picture On the left is the back side of a public toilet that is being cleaned, manually. And on the back, you can see a plastic water container which abound in the Greater Accra. And the second development objective is to strengthen management of environmental sanitation, and this includes treatment facilities, regulation, etc. The IDA project components, the first one basically finance the software needed to reach to the low-income communities, who is the objective of the project, and particularly those who live in compound houses. It is estimated that about 18 months of engagement will be required from the first contact with the community in order to develop awareness on sanitation, hygiene, the participatory design process to select one feasible solution for the toilet, to the time when the facilities will have been built and the community is ready to either maintain them by themselves or properly supervise any contracted operations and maintenance that might have taken place. The second component will provide mostly transmission mains, booster pumps, and any other facilities required to ensure that the water reaches the target low-income communities that we intend to benefit. The component 3 will finance the badly needed integrated strategic planning for environmental sanitation activities that includes liquid waste, solid waste, and drainage in particular, that, as I have said, are decentralized, but they are interacting one with another. This is being done, this integrated approach is done while respecting the mandate for decentralized responsibilities that the law requires. This also will provide financing of hardware in the sense of collection and treatment facilities, whether it is for wastewater or mostly in these moments for fecal sludge. Finally, the component 4 will provide plenty of technical assistance to all levels, from the national, municipal, and will also promote the development of local private sector, sanitation markets, etc., etc. This project is, with the complexity, it requires a strong coordination. So here I'm just highlighting some of them. First I would like to point that there is a working relationship between the government of Ghana and development partners, NGOs, CSOs, to provide advice and to discuss issues. Among the development partners, there have been also some extra coordination with the African Development Bank, the French and the Dutch and the USAID, who are participating in sanitation projects or would like to participate in the Greater Accra Metropolitan Area. NGOs, needless to say the importance, we have benefited during preparation from the advice and the contributions from People's Dialogue, which is part of the Slum Dwellers International, CHF, now called Global Communities, the Water and Sanitation for the Urban Poor, CONIWAS, etc., a number of them. Cities Alliance, provided some very, very significant and very necessary funds in order to develop the strategy for the consultations with the low-income communities. IFC is part of the team, and they will be playing, both roles. With, big ticket items, they will be advising to have some, maybe BOTs, to have, for example, waste treatment facilities. And they will also be supporting the development of local sanitation market, as they did in Kenya with selling sanitation. And last and most important for this presentation, GPOBA, came to the rescue and the support on this gap that exists between what the public funds can provide and the affordability that the people, affordability issues in order to be able to build the facilities that they require their support. As I indicated, the households are responsible for construction of the on-site facilities, and this is perhaps why access to improved sanitation is so low in Gama and in Ghana in general. The provision of toilet facilities in compound houses is very complex. Although by law, the compound houses, they need to have at least one toilet in the house, they are usually converted into rental rooms. And even if they had one, it would not help much to the 30 or 50 people that typically are living in one of these crowded compound houses. Although these, the landlords are generally not poor people, any improvements needed in the house are charged to the tenants who cannot afford to pay much more. Here is where GPOBA will hopefully come with partial subsidies, as we will explain now. I would say that worse than not having facilities will be to have facilities that do not work. And this is a concern that we also presented to OBA, that what happens if they have dislodging services that they cannot provide, and then the facilities do not operate, overflow, etc., etc. So here is where I am going to move quickly into the OBA sanitation facility, and obviously the objective is to increase the access to improved sanitation in these low-income communities. To give you some idea, the amount is that was approved. This has to be yet agreed with the government through all the legal documents, but the amount earmarked right now is $4.85 million. 4 million of which will go for subsidies for, like we will explain later on, and then there is implementation support for the different entities that need to make the supervision and make the things work. So we will see this later on. The implementation will be responsibility of the Ministry of Local Government, and we'll see later on how this is done. And there will be sub-project implementers that can be NGOs, equipment providers, private service providers, community-based organizations, any any group that is capable of doing will be can provide a proposal. The expected outputs of the project are to, at the end, be able to help provide 6,600 sanitation facilities, and about you can see that there is a little bit less of the sludging operations, because some of these facilities we hope that we can connect to existing sewer systems, and this will will not require the sludging operations. The estimated number of beneficiaries are in excess of 130,000 people. The project cost, including the contribution from the households, is $8.76 million. There will be a need, like in the OBA projects, for pre-financing, and this can come from different sources. from implementers, from microfinancing, from the landlords, etc. And the user contribution will be about 50% of the sanitation facilities and the dislodging costs. So the way that this is has been designed is that up to 50% of the sanitation facility costs could be subsidized, but with a cap up to a ceiling, just to avoid that any major structure that is not necessary is done. The same thing is with the dislodging operations. So there will be up to 50% and with a cap, and these caps have been established taking into consideration what is the minimum efficient cost to do these services right now. So if the costs are under that amount, it will charge 50% of those costs. If go about that amount, it will only be capped at a certain. And then you will see also in the payment structure that in order to make sure that the facilities are working well, not all the amount will be paid right away. So 75% of the subsidy will be upon verification that the facilities have been completed, and another 25% will be paid after you verify that after 3 months the facilities are well in use, etc. And with regard to the subsidies to dislodging, 100% of the costs will be paid upon verification that the service has been well done and properly disposed. So this will be somehow a positive thing in order to improve the environment as the second objective of the project is. And there will be an independent verification agent that will be hired by the Ministry of Local Governments and Rural Development. So here you can have like an idea of how this scheme is gonna be working, and the numbers provide you in order of how these different players work. We see at the top that is the GPOBA and the World Bank that will provide they will provide some funding. That will be a grant agreement with the government, and then the sub-project implementers will present proposals that will be evaluated. Once these proposals are approved, they will provide the services. They will have to be evaluated for the technical feasibility and the financial capacity. And then here is where the subsidies, as we were saying, are to be benefiting the tenants, since the facilities will be in the houses that are owned by the landlords, but the fees for the construction of facilities and the fees for the maintenance of these facilities will be incurred by the tenants. Once these facilities are working, there will be either, if possible, hook up to the existing sewage system right now, but most of it will probably rely in dislodging services that will again require some periodic payments. Typically every 6 months, but depending on the capacity and the size of the facilities, could be more often, or in which these might increase the costs. So I think that I will stop here, because I think it will be very important to provide sufficient time to address the many questions that I can see that are popping out on the screen. So thank you, and now I'll try to answer the questions.
Thank you, Ventura, very much for the presentation. I can see that we have many interesting questions that you will be kindly answering. So let's start with this one from Albert Wright. He's saying he's asking what's the difference between a master plan and integrated master plan.
Yes, this is very appropriate, the question, because I don't even like the word master plan anymore. We are calling it strategic plan. But the fact that by law each municipality has to prepare like a master plan, it's a chaos because many of these municipalities, they all pretend to have a treatment facility, they all pretend to have a landfill site, etc. So there is a need to integrate those views, and this is what the project is doing with this technical assistance. It's bringing all them together, and their plans will be part of this strategic, integrated plan for the entire region, and then each of them will be responsible for whatever by law is required to them. So again, what the integrated tries to say here is that is they are used to have individual plans, which need to be put in an integrated way.
Okay, thank you. Then we move to the, I'm trying to pick the questions according to the topic, so if I don't ask them in the order that people have, send the questions, just to let them know that I'm going to try to make sure that we ask you all the questions, Ventura. So I want to move to the question from Jeshi. The question is, what is the eligibility criteria used to identify poor beneficiaries?
This, is part. The OBA is going to be, working with the project, and the eligibility criteria. There are two components. One is that 75% of these low-income population in low-income communities live in one single room. So you can see that we are concentrated in this difficult area of compound houses. As I indicated at the beginning of the presentation, 50% of 3.6 million people live under these conditions, so shouldn't be any problem to do that. Now, the selection is done by the local governments, and the only thing, they can select the communities that they want, but it has to pass these two filters: 75% living in one single room, and 50% of them, 75% 75% in one single room, and 75% not having improved sanitation facilities. So the filter is I would say is very, very simple, but it's very telling of the situation over there.
Okay, yes, thank you very much. Then there are two questions about microfinancing. Jesse again asks, what is the role of microfinance institutions? And then also Kevin is asking, whether a microloan for dislodging equipment suggests small-scale, simple technologies like the Golper. Is this what is envisaged under the project?
Yeah, with respect to microfinancing, there is very minimum microfinancing. So this is part of the areas that we are hoping that are going to be developed as part of this project, and which we are just part of the support to the government of Ghana of what they want to do. So basically, microfinancing should be happening when they see that there are local private sector that can provide the services and demand, from the people in order to buy that. So this is something that there is very minimum, and we have been talking to some of our partners that are working in this area, and looks like it's an area that can go very well. And the second question about, we are, in order to serve some of these areas, right now there is no equipment to even go into this area. So there will be a need to develop, some equipment that can fit into tight spaces, etc. We know that this exists in many other, countries that are doing this. So this will be again developed. This is a private sector, driven type of
You are deleting the
business.
ones that I already
So
asked.
so we are expecting that this is gonna develop as they go. Now we are definitely looking at and this is part of the strategic study is there is a lot of decisions. I mean, like for example, treatment facilities. Are they gonna be some large treatment facilities? Are they going to be smaller facilities that are, with the appropriate and the ultimate technology in order to be able to not only treat but also to generate some byproducts, etc. This will be essential and part of the strategic planning that I call, for that reason, strategic rather than master planning.
Thank you, Ventura. Now that you moved to the topic of treatment facilities, I'll give you some questions on that topic. Tim is asking, he's wondering where all the newly collected sludge is going to, whether it's going to be treated, and if it's going to be added to the amount at Lavender Hill going to the ocean.
Well, I mean, all the sludge should be treated. I mean, Lavender Hill right now, for people who are not familiar, was a place where basically was being dumped into the sea, but was an official, site of Accra to be doing that. I mean, this is going to take some time, so this is why we were very careful in the project to require that the sludge that is generated is going to approve designated sites. Now, we know that on day one there won't be treatment facilities in place, but the idea is that we know where this goes, and eventually, over the length of the period of the project, there will be some treatment facilities in place, and they will be assigned where to go.
Okay, then Luis has some follow-up questions regarding treatment facilities. He's asking how the large BOT for sanitation are supported after being in place, and what entity signs the contract with the BOT provided. Would be the revenue, where will the revenue come from?
Yeah, we, as a matter of fact, thanks to Luis Tavares, I got in touch with, some people in Manila where they are doing some of these services. And the benchmarking is that with the amount of fees that they are paying right now to discharge the sludge into this official facility, it will be sufficient to be able to recover the operation, maintenance, and most of the capital cost. So the plan right now is that whichever facility is in place will be self-sustainable, and if the numbers do not, make it for all of the capital costs of the investments, then we, provide funds for that. But at the end of the day, what is necessary at this time for all is that there is a fee stream coming to the facility which is sufficient for doing that. And from our benchmarking right now exists, if obviously is not taken out of that. Now, right now, the private sector participation has been very anecdotic and sometimes just these unsolicited proposals that sometimes are not sustainable. So with IFC, we are working on that, advising the government. They are advising both, in the Ministry of Local Governments, where these facilities will have to be, probably if they are facilities serving more of one municipality, will be under the umbrella of the Ministry of Local Governments. But particularly in the Ministry of Finance, they have a unit to make sure that private sector is promoted, but in a way that is competitive, transparent, etc. So IFC is advising both the Ministry of Finance, but also will be working in this project, hopefully at the request of the Ministry of Local Government or the Ministry of Finance, in providing advice for particular activities.
Thank you very much, Ventura. Now moving to a different topic, Mohamadu is asking, related to the coordination partnership component, many stakeholders are involved. What is the legal framework that links all the involved parties to their commitments in order to play the roles as intended for the partnership to work well?
Yeah, this, as I tried to explain, there have been a lot of engagement. Some of them has been just to coordinate the design of the project, and that coordination, was done at the highest level, involving the key development partners and NGOs, etc. Now, regarding the implementation of the project, there will be agreements. NGOs are right now the few facilities that are being provided in low-income areas of Accra are provided by some of these NGOs, which are funded by sometimes the U.S. government, other entities, but have been done at a very low scale. The idea is that we want to take advantage of this experience that exists and scale up with that. But all the responsibilities and the commitments in order to develop the facilities will be definitely, and here is where this contract, these proposals, for example, through the OBA, it will take place, because this will be demand-driven or supply-driven, if you will, of these sub-project implementers that will come to an area where there has been all this engagement, the software at the communities, there is a demand, so they come, they have basically being able to find this bridge financing that they require. They present their proposal, and they will be going, and then they will be they won't be paid, so to speak, unless they provide the facilities with the specifications in a way that are working at the end of for a few months after they have been built, as I tried to explain before. Now, the legal framework, that this work, like I said, the legal framework in Ghana, it's the overall responsibility for these activities fall within the local government. So there is a sanitation policy in the country, which is, it's very good and whatever, but at the end of the day, the responsibility for enforcement, etc., it will be with the local governments. And this is why we are providing this significant technical assistance, so that the local governments can be trained, but also the national entities that will be eventually, once the project is done, will be providing this advice to local governments beyond the Greater Accra Metropolitan Area. And the technical assistance will be to put regulation. Right now there is regulation for water, but regulation for these practices is done at the local level, but without any any good way of doing that. So this is like that. And then one important thing of this project that I didn't mention on the IDA project is a component for social accountability. So there is a component of the project that will be engaging with the communities, training the communities to basically, on one hand, make sure and alert if the things are not working, and another way to be able to educate them so they can require and provide better services from the responsible entities.
Thank you, Ventura. And also, now that you started talking about the OBA facility, maybe we can take some of the questions related to that. also regarding to the League One framework, probably you can also mention that some of the contracts and agreements that will be signed between different parties for the OBA facility. But let's get, I'll give you a question from Clarissa. She is asking what is the indication that implementing agencies such as NGOs will be able to meet pre-financing requirements?
Well, I mean, they have to come with a proposal. And again, the NGOs are not supposed to provide the financing. I mean, they are supposed to provide the facilitation, and then eventually they can be part of the implementation, but they will have to be working with microfinancing. They will have the funds advanced by some financial institution. I mean, the idea is that they have to present a plan. So we don't want to say which is that plan. So they have to present a plan that complies with the technical requirements of an improved facility. And I say this improved, with between quotations, because some of these crowded areas, they will have to be, at the community, at the household level. There won't be the possibility of having an individual toilet facility for each room. So there will have to be a limited sharing of facilities, which maybe by the the WHO standards might not be considered totally improved, but definitely will be a fantastic step over the current practice of having to go to a very bad public toilet, or just practicing open defecation, which I think is much extended than what the official numbers say.
Ventura, here is a follow-up question from Clarissa. She's saying, who does the matchmaking with microfinance agency? Who does? It is part of the project?
Yeah, as I indicated, there is, practically non-existing microfinance agencies. I mean, there have been, for other purposes, there has been interest. There are other development partners that are supporting the development of this microfinancing, but right now there are very few. But again, I mean, here is a double challenge. We need to create the supply, and one of the supplies will be microfinancing entities or other kind of financing entities, but this will only work if there is demand for that. So again, I mean, this is we are trying to put it all the pieces over there, and we'll have to work over time in order to have that. But the important thing is when they present a proposal, they will have to be both from the technical side and from the financial side. We'll have to make a proposal that is doable, is realistic.
Yes, maybe just to complement Clarissa here, the approach and the different interventions of different stakeholders in the OBA project was envisaged based on some current models that are already happening in the Gamma, where different stakeholders and can do form partnerships in order to present proposals that will fulfill the eligibility criteria to be able to implement the sub-projects. And so in that case, in that sense, like the sub-projects, it's envisaged that the sub-projects may be implemented through different models with different parties provided pre-financing, etc. But continue with the OBA facility, there is another question here from Luis Tavares that is saying that the subsidy schedule is very hard to implement. If you can please elaborate on it, Ventura. He is specifically asking how was the OBA output cost calculated? What are the line costs that were considered?
Yeah, this, as Luis knows very well, it's a very tricky question. Subsidies, it's always, I mean, we, there are people who really think that subsidies are not good, and there are other people who, thanks to subsidies, have been able to provide services. So, what based upon the lessons learned from many experiences, we have been trying to try to, on one hand, provide the benefit of the subsidies, but on the other hand, avoid the perverse incentives of subsidies that are open, like in the sense 50% of what. So, with the help of a consultant that was involved in the preparation of that, there were reviewed a number of facilities that are currently in place that seem to be very efficient. The, there was, a number of these that were evaluated, and so at the end of the day, the amount of subsidy was capped at 50% of the cost of this efficient facility. And the number is about $1,200, $1,300. Now, we are hoping that with the development of this, supply and demand for facilities, they might come with facilities that are technically suitable, that come at a lower cost. And if that's the case, the subsidies will only pay up to 50% of those costs. So here, this subject of subsidies again is very tricky, but we try to take the benefits of the 50% in case that the cost of these facilities go down, as we expect with more competition and supply, and at the same time put a cap with the amount that we have right now. Excuse me, that right now, has been established, and maybe can be revised as during the project if we see that that is too low or whatever. But I mean, we feel very very satisfied with the amount that has been utilized and is doable.
Ventura, yeah, here just to let you know that Luis Tavares is, I know you will have something to say about this, that subsidies could be good. It's just a comment, to emphasize what you were saying. Okay,
Yeah.
then do you want to say something about that, or we pass to the next question?
No. I mean, again, subsidies are very controversial, and as I said, we try to take the advantages and try to, fence out the disadvantages, but it's very difficult.
Yes. Okay, so the following question, we have two similar questions from Kevin. He's saying, who will be responsible for operation and maintenance? The people using the toilets are tenants, but the owners are the landlords. How interested will tenants be in taking responsibility? The other point is, who will deal with the key challenge of tank dislodging?
Yeah. This is why it's so important, and this is going to be a big challenge because the time that it takes in order to have a facility that is agreed with the community, and again, the challenge of this community is that these communities are moving communities, but they have long leases in Ghana, usually up to 2 years. So you will be working with a community, establishing some rules of the game on, number one, what are the type of facilities that are going to be provided, how much they will have to pay, how much the landlord will have to be paid. This is going to be a very interesting consultation that is going to take place in these communities. But the important thing is that as part of this design, I mean, the emphasis is going to be on these facilities have to operate. So there will have to be established like a fund, how much is going to have to be put by each tenant, in order to provide the services, how much will be the responsibility of the landlord, and uh, and then I mean here is where the subsidies will come for the tenant part that they cannot provide. So again, this is something that is it has to be discussed community by community. We expect that there will be some turnover of people who will move from one community to the other, but on the benefit side, any family that comes to live in one of these places, that live in one single room, the entire family, we might lose some poor people, but will be replaced by some poor people. And then there will be a mass of people that, since the visas don't expire at the same time, so in order to keep that culture. And finally, I mean, like all these, consultations and social development, this is not a one time, even if it's an extended time of 18 months from the very first visit to having the facilities well run, but it will be required, and this the government will have to work on that to continuously re-engaging with the communities, emphasizing the importance of this sustainability, etc., etc.
Some related question here is saying that, and I know that you probably can link it with another feature of the Gamma project is, once the facilities are operational and OBA support is received, how is the facility operations and maintenance monitored?
Yeah, so the first monitoring is going to be done by the low income community itself. So this is part of the training. But I mean the technical assistance is providing some training for the local authorities that will have to do enforcing that the facilities that the environmental regulations are met, etc., etc. And the same thing applies to these lodging services that right now they go and discharge perhaps in areas that are not authorized. So there has been some ideas with this regulation and the use of ICT that we have right now in order to be able to create an incentive. This, by the way, for some of the people who might follow these things, this was part of a sanitation walkathon and came as a very good idea for this project to have some sort of device in the truck in order to track physically where they go and where they discharge, but also to make it to put it together with the payment. So the payment, since most people right now in Ghana, in other places, they are using more and more the cellular phones as a way of making payments. So there will be a mechanism that part of the payment will be to these people when they pick up the slots, but the rest of the payment will not be paid until they discharge in the appropriate place that will be established. So this is a very interesting area, and again, I mean this hopefully we are having a lot of new ideas with particularly with the help of ICT in order to how to make sure that people is not only trained, but these services are enforced, and there are some accountability by independent people in order to make sure that that if they don't work well, this is reported, and so this mechanism is part of the technical assistance.
Thank you, Ventura. Definitely the ICT tools will be an interesting feature to see how it gets implemented in the project. We have only two more questions, one a little bit related to the previous one. Satish is asking, who decides or regulates the tariffs and the user fees?
Well, tariffs for water or sewer are regulated. As a matter of fact, sewers, were part of the water company, and then they were left, and supposedly part of the water is, where sewers are a fee that goes over there. But most of the user fees is right now self-regulated. I mean, like in many places, this private sector, they apply some fees. There is competition, so since there are so many players, it's like a self-regulated mechanism. I mean, the idea is to have some regulation, which, like the subsidies, I mean, it's good and it's bad, because sometimes when you try to regulate economic regulation, if you don't do it well, it might be very bad. But right now, they have competitive prices because they have many of these companies over there providing the services, and and usually, typically, these companies, like they do for solid waste, they might charge a little bit more to, better houses, and a little bit less to low-income houses. Now, right now, they don't go to low-income houses because there is no demand. So here again is, why OBA is coming, very good, because, I mean, we have to tell them, yes, I mean, there are going to be funding in order to do this, because they will need not only to provide services to these low-income communities, but even develop this equipment or whatever that is necessary in order to do that. But again, based upon the experience of other places where they have done that, this is doable. And up to this point, I think regulation, for me, is going to be part of the technical assistance. Mostly that everybody have the same rules, so the fecal sludge is not discharged into a drain, an urban drain, etc. So it goes to an official site, and then the user fees, might or might not be regulated depending on how the things evolve. But right now, it's a competition, it's self-regulated, and that's the way it is.
Thank you, Ventura. And the last one, but not least, Juan Carlos is asking whether you could give us some tips to design a sanitation output in which one challenge, like how to reconcile the different time frame between the engineering element, which will be a short-term time frame, well-built toilet, and the behavioral element, which is in the medium term for use and maintenance.
Well, here, in the short time, I mean, what we are working on both the short time and the medium term. I hate to say that. I mean, in the past we were saying, well, eventually here there will be some sewers that will become, in 10 years. So these people, let's, build something that, only lasts for a short time, and then eventually will be replaced. The reality is that some of these things do not happen, especially in these, fast-growing cities. So the idea is that we have to, we want to have something that it works, and it works theoretically forever, provided a good maintenance. As the technology evolves, etc., or if a major improvement is done into these more centralized systems, etc., this will take over. But I mean, we don't want to count on the medium and long term into something that will come. So the idea is that, I mean, we want something simple that can work, that can be operated and maintained with the minimum capacity, financial and technical, that the people are going to have.
Well, thank you very much, Ventura, for the presentation. It is already almost 10, so we're going to finish here. Thank you, everyone, for attending the webinar. Just some final announcement. The recording and the presentation will be available on the GPOBA website. We will share the link with you. The website would allow continuing the discussion further after today, so feel free to post additional questions or comments you may have, and someone from the team will make sure that we respond to the questions. The next webinar will be on solid waste management in July, and please complete the feedback survey before leaving. Thank you very much.